Okay, very good evening, students. Now we are going to discuss about the GST amendments. So now you are seeing the soft copy here on the screen. The amendments here, the particular part of the amendments material was divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Whereas the part 1 deals with amendments applicable to May 2022 attempt, and whereas part 2 deals with the amendments that are applicable to December 2021 attempt. That means generally the exams may happen in the month of November, but previously it happened in the month of December now. So that's why. So if at all any students who are using the updated material, now definitely referring to May 2022 amendments is sufficient. But whereas with respect to the students who are actually using the book which are actually previously it was not updated for December 2021 amendments, so definitely you have to refer the amendments video which will be played to you later on. So please check it once because the attachment is there for you. Okay, check it once. See this. So two parts here, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 deals with amendments in GST applicable to May 2022 attempt, and very few amendments are there. See this. This is part 2, amendments in GST applicable to November 2021 attempt. So this is part 2. So please check it once. See this. All these amendments are already included in the 46th edition of material. So if at all you are not using those amended versions, amended books, then definitely you can refer. The amendments here, which are there here, amendments in GST applicable to November 2021 attempt. Amendments are also there on this particular soft copy or the hard copy that is shared with you. So please check it once. If at all these amendments are not included in the material, definitely refer the amendments material for this one also. Okay. So here we will start with exemptions chapter. So amendment in the existing entry, actually this is entry number 72. It may not be very much relevant from the examination point of view, but there was one amendment in that particular entry. That's why we are going to discuss that. See this, the training programs, services provided. That means to whom the service is provided, whether it is to the central government or to the state government or to the UT, and any training program for which 75% or more of the total expenditure is borne by government, whether it can be central government or it can be state government or it can be UTMA, Union Territory. Okay. So if you observe this one, say for example, eVidya Loka classes, an NGO is providing classes to the students with disabilities, in which the government contribution is as follows. Fee borne by the government 100% and fee borne by the government 75%, fee borne by the government 60%. Okay. In that case, based on this particular exemption, which cases this particular service provided by this NGO is exempt. So what is point entry number 72 say? The training program. That means here the services are provided to government under any training program for which the fee borne by, that means the expenditure that is bearing by this particular government is more than or equal to 75%, then those type of training programs are exempted. Okay. See this, if the fee is borne by government 100%, in that case, what is the position? It is more than or equal to 75%. In those cases, is it exempted or taxable? Exempted. 75% fee borne by the government, 75% others 25%. So what is the position? it more than or equal to 75% expenditure was met by the government, then exemption will be applicable. So based on that, 75% of the expenditure is borne by the government, therefore it is exempt. And next one is fee borne by the government 60% and others it is 40%. So here the expenditure that was met by the government is 60% only, which is less than 75%. Therefore, the entry number 72 does not cover those type of programs here. Therefore, the particular activity will be taxable. The particular activity will be taxable. This is the point, ma'am. And another exemption is there, ma, here. Withdrawal of existing entry. Entry number 43, Indian Railways. Service of leasing of asset by the Indian Railway Finance Corporation to Indian Railway. So generally the point is here, generally wagons, coaches, all these things are given on lease by the Indian Railway Finance Corporation to the Indian Railways. Previously there was exemption with respect to that, which is not relevant from the examination point of view. Now that particular exemption was withdrawn, and whatever the financing activities or leasing activities service that was done by Indian Railway Finance Corporation to the Indian Railways is now taxable. Okay. Next one, entry number 61A, National Permit to Goods Carriages. Services by way of granting of national permit to a goods carriage to operate throughout India or contiguous state. So what is the Regional Transport Office providing services by way of granting national permit fee approximately 16,500 to the transporter, that is the truck owner, generally taxable under RCM, but now it is exempt. So what is the point by here? Generally, the license, in order to run the GTA, Goods Transport Agency, that particular transporter or the truck owner needs some license from the Transport Office, RTOs, Regional Transport Office. Okay. In that case, the point will be, sometimes the GTA needs nationwide permit because GTA will transport the goods throughout the country. So for that it needs a national permit, all India permit, like that. So in order to grant that national permit or all India permit, approximately 16,500 fee was actually charged by these regional transport offices, okay, to the transporter. Previously it was taxable under RCM because the supplier is government and whereas recipient is a business entity. In that case 9 subsection 3 will be applicable. In that I think entry number 5, supplier is government and recipient is business entity, and whatever the service that is received by the government, received from the government, definitely it is covered under RCM. Under RCM, this particular transporter is liable to pay the GST. But now it was exempted. Therefore, whatever the national permit fee that is collected by these regional transport offices on them, what is the position, ma? Previously, they are taxable under RCM. Already you know that, na? 9 subsection 3, RCM is there. There are two concepts, FCM and RCM. FCM and RCM. FCM means forward charge mechanism. RCM means reverse charge mechanism. Under FCM, recipient will pay the GST to the supplier, and in return, the supplier will pay the GST to the government. Whereas under RCM, the recipient will pay GST directly to the government. So, in our CA inter syllabus, only RCM concept that is applicable to services covered. In that RCM concept 9.3, entry number 5 is there, where the supplier is government and the recipient is business entity. In those cases, RCM will be applicable recipient is liable to pay the GST. Okay, this is a point you should remember. But that's why here the regional transport office is providing service to the transporter who is a business entity. Therefore, it is covered under RCM under 9(3). Therefore, the transporter is liable to pay the GST on this national permit fee of 16,500 previously based on entry number 5. But now it was exempted. Therefore, there is no need to pay the GST. This is the point you should remember. Okay, with respect to exemptions chapter. Okay, ma'am. These are the areas. I think from the examination point of view, you may not be asked in these areas, but these are the statutory updates you should be aware of. Now the topic is with respect to registration, extension of time limit for filing the application for revocation of cancellation of registration by a registered person permitting beyond the stipulated time. Here, what is meant by the word revocation and what is meant by the word cancellation? As per section 29, subsection 1, in few cases, generally when applied by the registered person, your RC will be cancelled. And whereas with respect to 29 subsection 2, voluntary cancellation by the department will be there. Okay. When the RC is cancelled, either as per section 29(1), I think you are familiar with 29(1). There are few cases where on the application by the registered person, your RC can be cancelled. Like when the business is closed, when the business is sold, amalgamation or demerger, change in the constitution of the business, taxable supply becoming either exempted supply or non-taxable supply. Like these cases, 29(1) will be applicable, and whereas 29(2) deals with voluntary cancellation by the department, like when there is a dummy company or a fake invoice is issued, there is a violation of section 171, GSTR 3B was not filed continuously for 6 months, whereas CMP 08 was not filed for continuous 3 quarters, and a voluntary registered person does not commence the business within a period of 6 months, and whereas RC was obtained by fraud. There are few cases where 29(2) will be applicable. In all these cases, definitely your RC can be cancelled by the department. Your RC can be cancelled by the department. Okay. When RC is going to be cancelled by the department, or it was cancelled by the department, say for example, your RC was cancelled because you did not file GSTR 3B for a continuous period of 6 months. Okay. Now the point is here. If at all, due to some reason, you are unable to file that particular return and your RC was cancelled. Now you are saying that, sir, I am ready to file those returns, which were not filed previously. So it happened due to my accountant was not aware of that, or the accountant was fallen very sick, or he met with an accident, like that. Some reasons beyond the control of that particular organization owner is there. In those cases, definitely the department may give you permission again to revoke the license, revoke the cancellation of registration. That means previously your RC was cancelled by the department. Okay. But when you apply to the department, sir, okay, next time that this mistake may not be repeated, or sir, these are the circumstances which are beyond our control, like that. Okay, if at all any submissions or any points that are valid are there from the point of view of that particular applicant whose RC was cancelled either under 29 subsection 1 or 29 subsection 2, definitely what is the position, ma? His RC can be cancelled. The previous RC that was cancelled can be revoked by the department, ma. Can be revoked by the department. Okay. So extension of time limit for filing the application for the verification of cancellation of registration by the registered person. Previously, as per section 30, when your RC was cancelled. Within 30 days, you have to apply for revocation of cancellation. This point was there under section 30. Okay. But now, after amendment, there is an extension of time limit is there for filing the application for the revocation of cancellation. Okay. Previously, what is the point, ma? The taxable person can apply within 30 days of the service of cancellation order requesting for revoking the cancellation. That means when you were served with cancellation order, from that particular date, within 30 days, you should apply for revocation. If the proper officer is satisfied with your answers, then proper officer will revoke the cancellation. If at all he is not satisfied, he will conclude to reject the request for revocation of cancellation. This was the point that was there previously, but now, what is the point, ma? The said period of 30 days may. So, may means when the word may actually comes into scene, it is not the right of the SSC, ma. It is the discretionary power of the department whether to grant extension to you or not. Okay. So, the said period of 30 days may, on sufficient cause being shown, and for the reasons to be recorded in writing, be extended for a period not exceeding 30 days by the additional or joint commissioner, 30 days by the commissioner over the extension in point A above. That means initially, what is the time limit for the application with respect to revocation, ma? Within 30 days. Okay. If at all there was some reasons which are beyond the control of the applicant and those causes are sufficient, okay, and those causes are recorded in writing, that particular time period can be extended further by another 30 days by additional commissioner or joint commissioner. Sir, is there still any possibility to extend the time limit? Yes. What is that additional time limit here? Another 30 days by the commissioner over and above this point number 1. That is the point you should remember. So, if at all you want to see that particular point in brief, the time limit for filing application of revocation of cancellation will be, what is the normal time limit, ma? Within 30 days of cancellation of order. And extension 1. What is extension 1, ma? Maximum 30 days by the additional commissioner or joint commissioner. Extension 2 can be done by the commissioner up to a 30 days time period over and above the original extension that was granted by additional commissioner or joint commissioner. Okay, ma? So, there was an amendment in section 30 with respect to revocation of cancellation. With respect to section 30, initially the time period is 30 days. Now there is extension of time period for that section 30. Extension 1 can be granted by the additional or joint commissioner for a period of 30 days, and extension number 2 can be done by the commissioner for a maximum period of another 30 days. This was the amendment that was there in this point. Okay. This is the amendment that is there in registration chapter, ma. Next point is tax invoice, credit and debit notes and e-way bill, ma. In this, there was a amendment with respect to e-invoicing concept, ma. So generally, e-invoicing, electronic invoicing concept is applicable to the every registered person whose aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year from 2017-18 onwards exceeds 50 crores that are required to generate the e-invoicing. Okay, ma. That means every registered person whose turnover in the preceding financial year exceeds 50 crores starting from 17-18 onwards is required to generate the e-invoicing concept, ma. Okay, here the point will be, but every point will have some exceptions, na. So in this case also, definitely the people, definitely what is the position, ma? Some people or some notified persons are not required to generate the e-invoice even though their turnover satisfies the above limits. That means even though their turnover exceeds 50 crores, then also what is the point, ma? E-invoicing concept will not be applicable to them. So that means the notified persons for whom it is not mandatory to give to generate e-invoicing. In that, the first one will be special economic zones. Why these special economic zones will be created, ma? In order to develop the backward states or to give a balanced growth, the concept of special economic zone was created. There is a speciality that was there with this special economic zone. Once an area has been notified as special economic zone, it will be treated as outside Indian territory for all taxation purposes. So that's why for special economic zone people, this particular e-invoicing concept will not be applicable even though their turnover exceeds 50 crores. And in the same way, insurance, bank, financial institutions, NBFCs, generally these people will undergo many number of transactions per day. There will be huge volume of transactions. So generally, practically, issuing invoice every time is a, I think it will be a time consuming as well as a practically very difficult procedure to be followed by these people. Insurance, bank, financial institutions, NBFCs. Okay, ma. Generally these people will undergo huge number of transactions. Na? That's why for them this e-invoicing concept is not applicable. And in the same way, GTA supplying services in relation to the transportation of the goods by road in a goods carriage. Generally, GTA services will be there in a much more unorganized sector. Ma. So practically it is a difficult task to ask them to follow this invoicing concept because they will serve to the most unorganized sector, GTS. That's why for GTS also this point is not applicable, e-invoicing. And supplier of passenger transportation service, for him also there will be a huge number of transactions. So it will be a practical difficulty for them to issue the invoicing. That's why for them also invoicing concept is not applicable. And person supplying services by way of admission to exhibition of cinematographic films in the multiplex, that means multiplex theaters. So with respect to multiplex theaters, what is the position, ma? With respect to multiplex theaters, what is the position? Generally, these also issues many number of tickets, na? So every time issuing the invoicing is also a difficult task for them. So all these people are already covered previously. But now in addition to these people who are notified, like special economic zones, insurance, GTA, passenger transportation, multiplex theaters, along with them, now another person is also there in this particular list. Welcome, Mr. Government Department. This person now. Now e-invoicing concept is not applicable to the government department and local authority along with the people what we have discussed. Okay. See this? The government department and local authority was now included. Now included. This is the point. So what is the statutory update in brief? The concept of e-invoicing is also not applicable to government departments and local authorities. Okay, this is the point you should remember. Okay, ma. The next point will be here. E-waybill generation. What is meant by the word e-waybill, ma? Electronic waybill. Generally, when it is required to be generated, if at all two conditions are satisfied, e-waybill is required to be generated. What are those two conditions that are to be satisfied? First one, it will be, what is the first one, ma? When there is a physical movement of the goods that was involved. And second case will be when the involved goods value is more than 50,000, in those cases, e-way bill generation is mandatory. Okay. So, e-way bill can be generated either by the supplier or by the recipient or by the transporter. But when you fails to follow some rules or some restrictions, the e-way bill generation can be blocked by the department. Okay. Generally, the point is when the person not filed the returns, see this restriction on furnishing of information in part A of the form number that is required to file this e-way bill is EWB01, who are actually restricted to generate this e-way bill. He may be consignor, consignee, transporter, ECO or courier agency. That means every person is actually restricted. If at all, a person who is paying tax under section 10 has not furnished the statement, the person paying tax under section 10 means composition scheme. Under composition scheme, you are required to file CMP 08 on a quarterly basis. But whereas this CMP 08 was not furnished for 2 continuous quarters, then e-way bill generation can be blocked. In the same way, a person other than a person specified in clause A has not furnished the written statement. Other than clause A means the person who is following normal scheme. When the person is following normal scheme as per section 9, he is required to file GSTR 3B on a monthly basis. Okay. Then, if the person has not filed GSTR 3B for a continuous 2 months, the person who did not file GSTR 3B for a continuous 2 months, then also e-way bill generation can be blocked. And next one, a person other than a person specified in clause A, that means a normal registered person who is following section 9 has not furnished the statement of outward supplies, that is GSTR 1, for any 2 months or quarters as the case may be. That means the normal registered person did not file the GSTR 1 for any of those 2 months. Okay. And a person whose registration has been suspended over self-cancellation or cancellation by the proper officer. That means 29 subsection 1 or 29 subsection 2. In all these cases, e-way bill generation can be blocked. First one, CMP 08 was not filed for a continuous 2 quarters. Next one, GSTR 3B was not filed for continuous 2 months. GSTR 1 was not filed for any of 2 months, and when the RC was suspended. In all these cases, definitely the person is unable to generate the e-way bill. This is the point. But now the amendment is here. E-way bill generation facility to be blocked only in respect of outward movement of the goods by the defaulting registered person. Who is the defaulting registered person? These are the persons who are called as defaulting registered persons. Okay. As per rule number 138E of the CGST rules contains the provisions pertaining to blocking of e-way bill generation facility, that is disabling the generation of e-way bill. If at all those points what we discussed attracts, then e-way bill generation can be blocked. Earlier, a user was unable to generate the e-way bill for a GST identification number if the said GST identification number was not eligible for e-way bill generation in terms of rule number 138E. It implies that GST identification number of such blocked taxpayers could not be used to generate the e-way bill neither as a supplier nor as a recipient. That means whatever the points that we discussed in this particular table attracts, your e-way bill generation will be blocked based on your GST identification number. Once your GST identification number is blocked, then your GST number cannot be used to generate the e-way bill as a supplier as well as a recipient. This was the previous point. But now that said rule has been amended to relax such a restriction. So blocking of GST identification number for this e-way bill generation would only be for the defaulting supplier GST number and not for defaulting recipient or transporter GST number. Okay, ma. That means previously, once your GST number was blocked, then you can't be a part of e-way bill as a supplier, as a recipient, or as a transporter. But now some relaxation was given to that, which is fairly reasonable, that your GST number will be blocked for the generation of e-way bill when you are a supplier. When you are a supplier, then only what will happen, ma? This particular e-way bill generation will be blocked. But when the registered person is the recipient or when the registered person is the transporter, in those cases, e-way bill generation will not be blocked after this amendment. This was the relaxation that was given. However, the suspended GST number can get the e-way bill generated as a recipient or as a transporter. Just now I discussed, once your GST number is blocked, it is blocked as a supplier to generate the e-way bill, but still the e-way bill can be generated being that registered person as a recipient or as a transporter. In other words, e-way bill generation facility is blocked only in respect of an outward movement of the goods of the registered person who is not eligible for the e-way bill generation as per Rule 138E. E-way bills can be generated in respect of the inward supplies of said registered person. So the straightforward answer is here. When your registered number is used as a supplier, that means in respect of an outward movement of the goods from your side, then only you are not eligible to generate the e-way bill. When you are part of that particular physical movement, either as a recipient or as a transporter, then e-way bills can be generated. Example, a shopkeeper sells a pen for 100 rupees to the buyer. After the sale, the pen belongs to the buyer and shopkeeper does not have any right on the pen. This is the transaction of sale. Yes, we know that. Okay, Mr. A registered person paying tax under regular scheme in Delhi has not filed GSTR 1 for the last 2 months. Okay, he did not file the GSTR 1 for last 2 months. When GSTR 1 was not filed for the last 2 months, then e-way bill generation can be blocked. Mr. B, who is there in Haryana, a regular return filer, wants to generate an e-way bill for the goods, to be supplied to Mr. A. Okay, here who is the supplier? Mr. B is the supplier. And who is the recipient? Mr. A. Who is Mr. A? The defaulting person. Okay, as per the earlier position of the law, Mr. B would not have been able to generate the e-way bill with Mr. A GST number, even though who is the supplier? Mr. B, and who is the recipient? Mr. A, but still Mr. B is unable to generate the e-way bill because previously, once your GST number is blocked, your number cannot be used to generate any kind of e-way bills. But in terms of amended position of the law, there will be no more restriction in generating e-way bill as Mr. B, who is making outward supplies, is a regular return filer. So Mr. B e-way bill is not blocked. Who is generating the e-way bill here? Mr. B. And who is the defaulting person? Mr. A. Here Mr. A is a supplier or a recipient. He is there in recipient capacity. Therefore, as per the amended law, definitely e-way bill can be generated. Mr. A wants to generate e-way bill in respect of an outward supply to Mr. H. In the continuation of that example, Mr. A now wants to be a supplier And in this example, Mr. H is the recipient. Definitely, Mr. A now cannot generate the e-way bill because his e-way bill generating facility is blocked. See this, the e-way bill generation is blocked. In this case, as it is an outward movement of the goods of Mr. A, who has not filed GSTR 1 for the past 2 months. This is the amended version. Now your GST number will be blocked as a supplier, and your GST number is not blocked when your capacity is in the recipient or in the capacity of the transporter. So these are the amendments that are there with respect to this particular topic, which is in relevant to e-way bill. The next topic we need to see is here the returns topic. Whereas with respect to this returns topic, the amendment is in relation to the late fee, what we are going to discuss now. Generally, what is the late fee with respect to delayed filing of GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, GSTR 4, like that? What is the position? Per day 100 rupees or 5,000, whichever is lower, will be paid as late fee under CGST, and same type of late fee will also be levied as per SGST. Now, there is a maximum late fee that is payable for the delayed filing of this GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, GSTR 4 and GSTR 7. They are rationalized now. Okay. As per section 47 of CGST Act stipulates that a specified amount of late fee for delay in filing of any of the following by their respective due dates. Okay. Section 47 is applicable when there is a default in filing any of these returns by their respective due dates. First one, statement of outward supplies, that is GSTR 1. Returns, including returns under QRMP scheme returns, 39, that is GSTR 3B. So this is GSTR 1 and this is GSTR 3B. And final return, this is GSTR 10. An equal amount of late fee is payable by the respective SGST or UTGST Act. Okay. How much penalty or late fee that is needed to be paid under CGST? Same amount of late fee will also be leviable by the SGST or UTGST Act also. Penalty leviable under IGST Act shall be the sum total of penalties leviable under CGST and SGST. That means IGST late fee is equal to CGST late fee plus SGST late fee. And the late fee can be waived off partly or fully by the government. That means the right of discretion is there with the government. The government can waive this particular late fee either fully or partially. Consequently, since the inception of the GST law, late fee is being regularly waived off by the government either partially or fully. For the tax period 2021 June onwards or quarter ending June 2001 or financial year 2021 onwards, as the case may be, the late fee for delaying filing of GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, GSTR 4 has been rationalized as follows. That means the maximum late fee was prescribed from the financial year 2020-21 onwards, specifically from June 2021 onwards. The total amount of late fee payable under 47 from June 2021 onwards or the quarter ending June 21 onwards, as the case may be, shall stated waived, which in excess of the amount prescribed below. That means the amount specified below is the maximum late fee. So, what is the amount we will calculate by using the previous provision, like per day 100 rupees or 5,000, whichever is lower. Okay, if at all that penalty is more than the maximum late fee that is payable as per this new amendment, the excess amount shall stand waived and there is no need to pay that excess amount. And now what is the limit here? We will see that. See this, the registered persons who have nil outward supplies in the tax period or whose total amount of the tax payable in the GSTR 3B is nil, as the case may be. Simply they are called as nil returns. Okay. For nil return, the maximum penalty that can be levied is 500. That means CGST 250 and SGST 250 and IGST, it will be in total 500. Any amount in excess of this 500, it will be waived. Okay. Let's say your nil return late fee is some 200. In that case, what is the position? 250 or 200, whichever is lower for CGST, 200. In this case, you will pay this 200. But whereas your late fee amounting to some 750 rupees, okay, 750 for CGST. In that case, what is the maximum late fee that can be levied? 250. In excess of 250, how much is the amount? 500. It will be waived and there is no need to pay that late fee. And register. So this particular late fee, the maximum late fee of 500, including CGST and SGST, is for nil returns. Registered persons other than nil returns filers, if the aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year is less than or equal to 1.5 crore, less than or equal to 1.5 crore, then the maximum late fee that can be levied is 2000 rupees. That means CGST 1000 and SGST 1000. For IGST it will be 2000. Okay. And next point is, for the people 5 crores aggregate turnover of more than 1.5 crore in the preceding financial year. That means if your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year exceeds 1.5 crores but less than or equal to 5 crores, in that case the maximum penalty that can be levied is 5000 rupees. In that CGST 2500 and SGST 2500. For IGST it will be 5000. And other than the people who are covered under 1 and 2, that means if your aggregate turnover is more than 5 crores, in that case, what is the normal late fee that is levied? That is per day 100 rupees or 5000, whichever is lower. This is the point you should remember. And whereas for delay filing of GSTR 4, generally GSTR 4 is for composition suppliers. This is the annual return that is needed to be submitted by the composition supplier. The total amount of the late fee payable under section 47 for this financial year 21-22 onwards by the registered person who fails to furnish this GSTR 4 by the due date shall stand waived in excess of the amount prescribed below, where the total tax payable, that is when it is a nil return, 500 rupees, the maximum quantum of late fee that can be levied. And whereas if at all the person is not covered under nil return category, that the maximum late fee that can be levied is 2000. That means in CGST 1000 and SGST it will be 1000. Total it will be 2000. And the next one is here. The mandatory requirement of submission of reconciliation statement audited by a specified professional done away. That means GST audit was now not mandatory. We will see that. Annual return, section 44, okay, there is no requirement to study the rule number. All the registered persons who are required to file the annual return, that is the GSTR 9, along with the self-certified reconciliation statement, reconciling the value of the suppliers declared in the return furnished in the financial year with the audited financial statements. So for normal taxpayers, GSTR 9, whereas with respect to composition supplier, 9A. Okay. But these people are not required to file the annual return, like CDP, NRDP, ISD, TDS deductors, TCS collectors, OIDR services, government departments, and any other person notified by the commissioner. Instead of GSTR 9, they will just file this GSTR 9C, self-certified reconciliation statement. Okay. Previously, these people are actually required to done the audit, but now a self-certified reconciliation statement is sufficient. Previously, GST audit is required if at all it is more than 2 crores or like that. But now this point was removed, and this point is not relevant for you from the examination point of view. Even though it was given for you in the statutory update, generally these reconciliation statements and all these topics are not there in your syllabus. So just have a brief bird view of this particular amendment, that is more than sufficient. Okay. So these are the amendments. Already we discussed these things. Okay, November 2021 amendments, ma'am. You can go through them. This is Aadhaar authentication process, and with respect to e-way bill, QR codes and all these things. These are the amendments, ma. If you want to study them, definitely you can study them. And if you want to see the amendments videos, ask your in charge, definitely, or those things may be updated in the YouTube. You can actually check them once. Okay, ma. So these are the amendments that are there with respect to May 2022 attempt, ma. Okay. So please be focused. I think these amendments video will be helpful to you. Very few amendments are there for May 2022. I think in that the relevant one will be for your examination point of view, this late fee point, ma. What we discussed, this late fee, I think to some extent it can be asked in the exam, late fee, and this revocation and the registration chapter. Okay, these two are the important areas we should focus more with respect to this amendments session. Okay, I hope this session is useful to you. Thank you all.